Good day friends, it's Denise and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you my go-to art materials. Just to give you some context, I've been painting since 2014 and although I have a love and hate relationship with painting, I always go back to it whenever I feel overwhelmed with life in general. Over the years, I was able to develop my limited painting skills and trying out different art materials also helped me to decide which of the many painting materials available in the market works for me and for my preferences. So let's get started. The first items that I'll be sharing with you are my paints. When I first started painting, I used watercolor pans, and as much as I like watercolors, I wasn't satisfied with its color payoff. I also had difficulty blending colors together. These issues led me to look for other painting options. Luckily, I discovered gouache paints after watching a video about old children's books. So I started using gouache paints 4 years ago, and my first ever gouache paints are from a brand called Reeves. Back then, I used my Reeves gouache paints for school projects, other people's school projects, and hand lettering works. Although I don't have all the colors included in the set anymore, I still use the remaining tubes to combine it with my other gouache paints. Although this is still my number one most favorite gouache paints ever. So the next gouache paints that I have are from this brand called Pebeo. So I got this 2 years ago from an art sale. Don't know its price, but I think this is more affordable than Reeves. Although I initially preferred my Reeves gouache paints, I slowly learned to appreciate my Pebeo paints. Actually, when I tried doing gouache paints again after a year of not painting at all, I was surprised that this product is also good. So this is my second favorite gouache paints. So the last gouache paints that I have are from Royal Talents. These are my recent purchase. I got this last year. So these paints are the youngest of the bunch and I haven't used this as much as compared to my Reeves and Pebeo paints. Although I want to try it if it's a good gouache paints or if I'll stick to my previous favorite gouache paint, which is Reeves. So aside from gouache paints, I also keep a white poster paint with me. So I use white poster paint as a substitute to white gouache paints because it's hard to find gouache paints, especially when I want to make my gouache paints lighter or when I want to make my own color palette. So my current poster paint is from the brand called Sakura. So this is what I got because that was the only white poster paint available when I wanted a bookstore. But there are other white poster paints that you can find in different bookstores. For paint brushes, I only use cheap paint brushes that you can easily find on bookstores and art stores. Most of my brushes were purchased 2 to 3 years ago, and you can see that most of them survived the changing times. Although I have to admit, I have to update my brushes because I think some of my brushes are not in good condition anymore. But I still think about it because I still feel okay with it, and then I still feel happy using these brushes. So that can wait. So yeah. So for my other painting materials, I try my best to use what I already have at home. That way I can allot my savings on more important things or for more important things. For my mixing palette, I use a mini canvas and an old chopping board. As much as I want to have the generic mixing palette, I feel more motivated to paint when I can see the remnants of my previous works. My mixing palette also inspired me to experiment with colors and color combinations. So this is an old chopping board which I repurposed and used as my mixing palette. So for my water container, I use this old strawberry jam glass. I prefer my water container with the cap just so I can avoid water spill, especially when I'm having a quick break. So it's cool container. For my towel, instead of using tissue papers, I use this old towel because it can absorb more water and I can use it repeatedly. You know, saving resources. For drawing guides and sketches, I just use an old mechanical pencil like this one and a generic eraser. So next, for watercolor pads, I prefer small watercolor pads because bigger pads overwhelm me personally. I also prefer smaller watercolor pads because I can bring them anywhere, like this one. I brought that with me when I traveled before the pandemic. So sometimes I also use tiny canvases for painting, but usually when I paint on canvases, I combine my gouache paints with acrylic paints. Here are some of the works that I made on my tiny canvases. So I use them as wall decors, or sometimes I give them as gifts to my friends. Although I still have to buy tiny canvases because I run out of tiny canvases anymore already. So that's my favorite. It's a cute painting of a cat, and this one reminds me always of the English Moors. So those are some of my tiny canvases. So yeah, they're very cute. So that's it for this video. I hope this inspired you to try out painting. And if you want to know more about art materials, you can really read more articles on the net. And thank you so much for watching this video, and see you guys on my next one. Bye!